Hello, I'm Mike Cradock, and today we're going to show you how to strip, clean and rebuild the centre diff of an MP9 and the front and rear diff of an MP9. Okay, so you've got your centre and your front and rear diffs. Tools you'll need is a 2mm driver with a torque setting on the Hitachi driver of 7, a 2mm hand driver, a small screwdriver, a scalpel and a pair of pliers. Oils you'll need, we're going to be rebuilding the diffs with a 5000 in the centre, a 6000 in the front and a 4000 in the rear. To grease the drive cups, we're going to use the ring gear grease and the Kyosho part. To lubricate the bearings, we're going to use the Kyosho SB bearing liquid, which seems to work very good, and we'll show you how to do that. So we'll start with the centre diff first. I always use the baby wipes. I find them to work very well on cleaning and everything, and they lubricate as well, so that there's no water in there really. It's like a some sort of oil, so they seem to be very good. So give the diff a good clean over, make sure there's no dirty patches, no wet patches of any oil leaking from the front or the top of the gear or round by the gasket. If it's not leaking from taking it out of the car, then that's a good sign that you know everything's sealed up right. So we take the driver, so once we've removed all the screws, you'll see the nice black silicone oil with the gasket sitting there. What I do is I lay that first so the capillary action will start taking the oil straight away. You can get some sprays, but it wastes your time and spray really, because the silicone doesn't break down, it just beads up and it'll stay where it is. So I've always used the baby wipes. It seems to get rid of the oil quicker. So I pull the centre gears out using the small screwdriver. Check your washers don't come out in the middle. Then to get this gear out, rather than try and dig it out and damage the gears, I just lay that and let gravity take its work. So while you're doing that, you can clean the gears with another cloth. So I'll start with this gear first. I'll just wipe it over quickly. Pull the gear off. Wipe it over. You don't have to do nothing, because what I suggest to do is leave this overnight unless you've got time. If you haven't got any time, just go through every gear wiping it. But what I would do is I would leave it overnight. The capillary action of the baby wipe will pull all of the oil out, and the gravity will take all of the oil out as well, and you'll find it really clean in the morning, and it saves a lot less cleaning. So if you save your diffs till the end of the day, do that, leave it overnight and then come back to it, or carry on with some other parts of your car. It's quite a good way. So you take the drive carb out, make sure that it's got not too much wear. If you can see a bit of silver, is a good sign. Important thing is to clean this groove out here so you can get the grease back into it. And what I do is I keep that side of the diff and that gear to that side, and this side of the gear and that side to that side, so that they all keep, that drive cup will always be on that side of the gear, so that the drive shaft is always wearing on that side. If you mix them up and mix these gears up, you know, it'll probably be okay, but you'll get more wear than usual because it's not wearing in the same spot in the car. So next we get the gear, and we just get the gasket, the scalpel gently underneath the gasket and lift it up. Try not to tear it. If you're on a bit of a budget, I'd wipe it over, and you can reuse the gasket maybe a second time. It'll be okay. Just look for, you can see where there's a slight dip in the gasket. Well, that's where it's been sitting down that way, so it's like hollowed that way. Put that to the flat side of the gear this time, and then the other side will be the flat side going onto the rough of the gear diff casing, and that will see you good for until your next rebuild, and then I would replace. But if you're not, and you want an easy time, then I suggest you put new gaskets in. Wipe the rest of the gear over, remove the bearing, again keeping that bearing on that side again because it's been used to running that way. Pull the O-ring out. Check if you're on, again if you're on a budget. If you're not, then I'll suggest if it's your first rebuild, then the O-ring should be okay, because you should have only been running the diff for an hour once from brand new. Once you drop all the oil out, you clean the diffs again this way and then put the O-ring back in. After that, just check if there's any flats on the inside of the O-ring. If it looks nice and round and it's providing a good seal, and obviously you've looked for leaks before you strip the diff down, then it should be perfectly okay as long as you wipe it over clean. And put that back on that side so it used to know. You can still see some recess of oil left in there from last time, which is a good sign. So wipe that out, and then wipe the shaft out as well, because you want everything clear there just in case any grit or old oil. You can see the dirt coming out. Give that a good wipe, and then place that on this side so you're keeping everything that side. With the planetary gears you won't need to worry because they touch both sides of the gears anyway. So what I do is I wipe that first like that, get most of the oil out. Then careful that you've got all the shims. Always make sure you use all the shims. Some people take them out because they say that they work freer, but it's no good. You'll get backlash in the end, and then you'll get a gear failure. You'll get a gear chip. You might notice some chips in the gear, but that's normal. It's where they're breaking in, and when you first break down the diff after running in, after an hour of use, when you drop the oil out, it might look a bit glittery, and that's what you're looking for. The thing that the main wear on the diff gears, especially in the centre, is this groove here, and you're looking when you put the shaft through this driver. If you feel it clicking too much when you put this in, if there's too much play like that, then you need to change that, because this is when it gets dangerous, because you can snap either this shaft or you can snap the pin, and then you'll do some serious damage to your diff. So if you've got plenty of backlash in there, then I would change. This one just feels okay and be alright to be used for another day. So keep all that to one side. You've got all your shims off of there, clean them up, just leave them face down again, let the gravity and the capillary action of the baby wipe do its job. Wipe the other one over, make sure you've got all four of these shims. It's important because sometimes they do slide into the casing and you won't notice, and then you have a shim, you're wondering why your diff's locking up when you've rebuilt it. Leave them face down. Just clean out again and leave overnight like that. Clean both diff shafts. Make sure there's not too much wear there. You'll notice a couple of bits of wear, but as long as they're not silver all the way around, then they're okay to use again, because the good thing is they're metal, and so it's just aluminium that will be wearing, because obviously the softer metal. Again, you can see that it's just a slight wear there. It's all good. So keep them there. Make sure they lie flat. With the bearing, just wipe that over. Again, don't waste your money with any spray and that unless it feels really notchy. This bearing's very smooth. So just wipe all the excess dirt about. Again, there's no real water going in it. It's like an oil, like an olive oil or aloe vera oil. So make sure you get it all nice and clean. And again, keep that one to that side, because you know that's gone with all the rest of the bearing, so everything's seated nice. Get some oil and just put a layer all the way on the top, so it's a total film of layer, and then again the gravity should do that, and what you'll find is that the oil will sink through and pull through with the baby wipe, and it should be a little bit of a grey matter comes out, and then just wipe it over again before you put it back. But I'll show you that in the rebuild of the video. So then you'll go on to the other side of the diff case of the centre diff. Hopefully that should have the gravity's taken its thing, and that's done that. So there's your gear. Just wipe it over again. Don't worry about too much of it, just make sure you get most of the excess oil off, and then lay that face down again, and the gravity should do that. And with this gear, with the centre diff, because it's a bigger compartment, you only need to just push the pin out. That's where the needle nose pliers come in handy. Just pull that out, wipe the pin clean, lay that side so you know that pin stayed with that. Pull the shaft out. Again, you can see just enough wear. And again, you can see a little bit of keyhole in here. This is okay for, I would say, another couple of hours run. Again, if you've got a good budget, then change it, but I would say that's okay to use again. And because you're using it in that direction and keeping it on that side, you won't get double wear of it wearing in a different place, because the centre drive shaft at the front sits in a different position to the centre drive shaft at the back. So you can see where the different positions are, where the keyhole in is. One's slightly in the middle and one's slightly over. So that's why I keep that there, otherwise you just make the wearing situation worse. And if you're on a tight budget, then that's what happens. Again, clean the bearing. Make sure all the dirt's off, excess dirt. And this is always a good, the centre diff usually runs a bit dry because you don't want to be spraying any oil near your brakes or any WD-40 over it, because it just leaks onto your brakes, leaks onto your brake pads, which absorb it, and then you'll never get any efficient braking. As soon as they get any WD-40, no matter how much brake cleaner you spray on it, you'll never get it out. You need to replace the pads. So this is why I always pre-oil all the bearings before fitting back. And again, nice bead of oil all the way around. Leave the capillary action to do its job. Next bit, again, remove the oil seal. I can get it out. Pull that out, check for any chips out of it, anything, any flatness on the inside, but generally pretty good oil seals. And if it's not been leaking or throwing anything out, then that looks okay. That's ready to fight another day. Again, keep that same side. Wipe this side. You can see where we, a little tip we got from Gerard Thibault is we put a bit of super glue on the centre diff, because it takes a lot more pressure than the other ones. So we put a bead of super glue around the outside, and we also put a bead on the inside, just to seal the metal to the plastic. So once you've wiped that out, wipe that again in the centre. And what we do now is you get the old cloth that you've been wiping and you push in and you get it in as much as you can, push it all the way in, and then you leave that way up on that thing, and you leave that overnight, and you should find that all clean. No matter how much spray you're spraying there, you'll never get it all out. The only way is to let gravity take its course and the capillary action from the baby wipe. So in the good old-fashioned Blue Peter days, here's one I prepared earlier. So this was left overnight. You can see that the oil's all drained out and the diff gears are all nice sparkly clean. You can see on that, on the centre gears and on the other side, and all the shafts. This is the front or the rear Obviously this one is the rear, so we're going to put 4000 in it. You can see I've marked that up. The only difference with stripping down the front or rear diff is you have the hole to remove your pin, because the casing is not as big as the centre diff. So what I do first is I use this ring gear grease from Kyosho. Very good grease, highly recommended. Takes the heat and takes the stress, and I put it in a syringe. It makes it easier for application rather than digging it out with a screwdriver. I just suck it up, put it in, and I make sure that you get all the grease into the groove. Don't worry about how much you use. So I take that side, keeping that side with that, I spin it around the wrong way in first, just to make sure it gets all the oil in there, and then I put it in this side as well, and just wipe that off again, and then repeat, just making sure you get all the air bubbles out of the grease in that groove of the drive cup. It's most important. Be liberal with the oil, or grease, sorry, and again that way. All helps lubricate the O-ring and lubricate the shaft, because it takes a lot of heat and pounding. So once you've done that, wipe the excess off. Place your bearing. Put your O-ring on. It should just go nicely in there, seat in there nicely. Put the shaft from that side in there. You can see there's plenty of grease around there, don't worry about that. And that's ready. Make sure it's a nice smooth action, nothing's locking, nothing's tight. Make sure the O-ring sits down, and that's ready. Onto the other side. Again, make sure you get all of that in the groove. This has been left overnight, so you can see that it's taken all the excess out and it's pretty clean inside. Just give it a wipe round just to make sure all the gasket's clean. It should be. Again, you do it from the inside, reverse, spin it round, make sure there's some in there, and you do the same again on the other side, just spinning it round, scrape it off onto the shaft again and again. Just keep repeating that, just to make sure you get all the grease in everywhere. Once you're happy with that, put your bearing back on, just wipe the excess off to the shaft, put your O-ring in, press it down. It should be lubricated enough, hopefully, to push through without that O-ring coming up, which it hasn't. There you go. Then once you get that, align your hole with the hole, put that through. You need your nose pliers, just careful not to damage the O-ring. Just spin it around to make sure the O-ring's seated right, and then just push through with your fingers. Make sure that's in the middle. And your other side of your gear that's been running on that side is all nice and clean. You can see where it soaked it out overnight. Pop that in, just locate. That's sitting flush, so that's nice and flush, so your diff goes back together right. Don't forget to put your screw back in with a 2mm driver. Make sure you get it straight, because the thread should already be cut from where you first built it. And just do it up flush. You'll feel it grip where it is. You don't need to bury it. It's just a sealing bolt, like a sump bolt. So that's ready. So what you do then is we're going to put 4000 in, Kyosho 4000. So what I do is I fill the diff about halfway, because you're going to get the volume of the centre diff gears going in and the top planetary gear going in. So I leave that to soak, you know, just while I'm doing the centre, just to get any air bubbles out, because you don't want any air in there as well expanding too much. And we go on to the centre gears. So what I do there is I get the shaft, you can see where the gears have been soaking overnight, getting rid of all that. So that's one set made up. Two, make sure you get the washers on either end. You haven't got nothing left over left on the baby wipe, so that's a good sign. So put the first one in, doesn't matter what order. Make sure the cutouts to the top. Locate, make sure your washers don't fall off. Just gently let that settle in. Without the top makes it easier. Then the next one, make sure the cutouts to the bottom. That should seat in nicely. Then you get your top gear, which has been soaking. You see some chips on there sometimes on the gear, but I wouldn't worry, that's where the gears are bedded in, and if they're used to running with the other gears, then that's it, everything's fine. As long as you keep these shims in, you should be fine. And this diff should last 3 hours now before rebuilding after new. Always drop the oil out an hour after use, first time. Just turn the diff around, make sure you get some rotation, make sure everything feels smooth, nothing feels notchy. Wipe some of the oil on top of the diff, and that's filled out about right. You don't want it overflowing and you don't want it underflowing. So that's ready. And what I was saying about the diff, if you're on the diff gasket, if you're on a budget, you can see this cutout where it's been that way. Turn it this way and lay it on top. Get a bit of the diff oil that's coming out, just wipe it around again. If you rub that into the gasket, a friend showed me this a long time ago, Regan LeBlanc, an old friend of mine, and it's a very good tip. Always made the gaskets work really well. So you get it so the ripples are at the top this time. Line that up so that it's just nice, so you'll know it'll be easier for the pins. So if you get your pin dead in the centre, dead in there, you shouldn't have no trouble with any locating holes or locating the pins. That should just snap back down onto there. Get your screwdriver just to locate the holes so the gasket's all in the centre and everything's sitting fine. A Hitachi screwdriver, I always set it on a torque setting of 7. Don't bury the first screw in because you want to seat them down nicely. So just do them all in, but don't do it fully up. Take the next one and go across like you would do if you're doing the cylinder head. And when I say about the torque setting, it's important that you have it on the high speed and not the low speed because you get more torque. I always set it with a high speed at the 7. And then the last one, if you're happy with everything's flat, then you can torque this one straight down. And then you go to the opposite side and torque it down. Then the next one, and then the next one. Shouldn't have any excess oil coming out. Wipe that over, and then I get the 2mm driver and just gently nip them up, just the same amount, and then you go across to the next side and then again to the other side, and then back again. Just a little turn so you get it as tight as you dare, but you don't want to be stripping the threads, but you want it to go down evenly. Once that's done, you check you got rotation, both things should be smooth, both ends, everything's fine, and that's how you've rebuilt the front or rear diff. And this one's got 4,000 already marked up. Okay, so we've done that, the rear diff, and you do exactly the same obviously with the front diff. All I've done is I get my white pen marker and paint it on. You can mark it with a number, but I find it easier to do a square block so you can change it easier. And so I'll mark this up as 6 so I know what it is, and it's just easier for identification when you've got a lot of diffs in the box, or when you take it out you can't always remember, or you can't always go by your old setup sheets from what you were using. So they're both done. Now we go on to the centre diff. Should really be overnight, but we've done one prepare so you get the idea. So we'll start with this side, with the gear side. Again, plenty of grease. Spin it round on that side, make sure you've got a nice layer of grease in that, and spin it on the other side, making sure you've got no holes in there. You can see a few holes, so we'll do that again gently, just spin it round so you're getting all of the air bubbles out of that groove in that shaft. Most important, always take your time with this because there's a lot of heat built up here and it needs a lubrication for your good diff action. And back again that way. And just wipe just the excess off in the end. Put your bearing, which we oiled up earlier. Always put the oil side that you've oiled that way so it'll come through. Shaft through. O-ring. Place the pin through in the centre. And that's that side ready. Keep that side with that gear. You can see that has been taking quite a bit of the oil out on the time that we've been making that video. Again, repeat the same side. Make sure you get plenty of oil pumped into that groove. Grease, sorry, not oil. Take that out. You can see that's reasonably clean. That's been probably half an hour with that soaking in. So again, from the inside and the outside, making sure that groove's got plenty of grease in it. Nice and slowly the second time down, and repeat. And again. You can see there's plenty of grease in the groove. Wipe a little bit of the excess off that. Again, the oil side up. Put that on. Through. O-ring in. Should slide through. Perfect. If it's lubricated good, the O-ring doesn't pull up. Then drop the pin in. If you notice, there's a little bit of a ridge on the inside where the diff shafts sit. If you put it in there, you might have trouble getting it in the pin. So make sure you get it on the flat side of the diff because you haven't got a hole to put it through. So try and put it in that side. And get your needle nose pliers. Take it into the corner. See, and that's the problem you'll get. It won't go in there because of the height. It's making the pin up. So don't force it. Just pull it back out. And then put it in the next side. And then that just slides in. So I was just demonstrating the problem, you'll have trouble forcing it in and you could cause some damage to the hole in the shaft. So don't try and force anything, just pull it back out. And you'll see them ridges, they're in 4 locations. Okay, so that's ready. That's your diff gear. Locate that. Again, make sure there's no backlash, which is good. You can't hear anything clicking. So that's ready to fight another day. And then I'll take the 5000 I'm going to use for the centre. And I'll fill this up again halfway, because with the centre diff you don't want it completely full, you just want it touching the gears. So I fill that up just up to halfway, and we'll top that off. I'll show you what we do with that. So I've done the centre planetary gears the same on the shafts, making sure we've got all our washers on. Place that one in with the cutout facing upwards, make sure it's down, and the other one with the cutout facing down. And this is where I was saying about you don't want too much oil in the centre, because the hydraulic, you can hydraulic a lot. So you want, basically they say in the instructions, 80% full with the centre. So you get your other side of the gear, place that in, and you can see the gear's not quite covering. So what I do, just add a little bit more oil. Just enough to cover the planetary gears. And if you do think it's too much in there, then the easiest way is to spin the diff round. Just spin it round a bit, you can see where it pulls the bubbles out, and just scrape off. And again, use that to lubricate your gasket, so that it makes it all supple again, because the gasket can get quite dry, and you don't want to put any of the gaskets in dry. You always want to supple them up with some oil that you're using. So settle that down in between the 4 screws so it's straight, so it's easy for lining. You can see most of the gears are covered with some oil, which that will all settle down, and that's how you want it. You don't want to overfill it, so you've got these gaps filled with oil. You can see the planetary gears are covered, and as this shaft goes in it will fill up anyway. Again, with the gasket, you look for the cutout. There's a slight, you can see the slight marking on that, so you want that going that way so that it's sitting the opposite side. Unless you're on a good budget, then you put a new gasket in and there's no problem with which side you put it down. Line the holes up, line your pin up in the middle so it's easy. Place that in there. Again, get your screwdriver, align the holes so you don't mess the gasket up. Make sure they're all in line and it's all sitting flat. Same torque setting, high speed on the Hitachi with 7 torque setting. Screw halfway down again. And across. Halfway down again. And then the last one, if you're happy with everything sitting flat, holding it down all the way, and again cross, directly across onto the next one. Onto the next one. Wipe the excess oil off, and on the inside here it's important that you get most of this off, because you don't want any silicone or grease or oil flying into your disc brakes. Most important. Check that it's nice and smooth. You're happy with that. There's no real notchiness or anything like that. Everything feels fine as you took it apart. Get your 2mm driver. Again, just gentle nip, and then onto the next one. Basically you're trying to get as tight as possible without stripping the threads and getting even pressure. If you do it all up one side, you're going to get a diff leak because the gasket's not setting down flat. So again, you'll feel it get tighter. Just gently cross from each one, same formation, until you're happy with that. It's flat. You'll see a bit of residue there. You might find in different temperatures when your car's been racing, in hot climates or cold climates, after your car's been raced, just check around here while it's still mounted in the car, and if you see a little bit of bleeding, it's not worth stripping the diff down unless it's due for a strip. Take the centre diff out and just tighten the screws up, and then you'll find it a seat down better. It's just the hydraulic pressure. It's amazing how much pressure goes on in that diff. But if it's not leaking, or if it keeps leaking, then you have to change the gasket. And then again with your pen, just mark up. This is a 5,000, so just a 5, just so you know where you are. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.